Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Taber Town Council meeting for January 18th, 2021. And just for the record, we do also have Councillor Stravas joining us on the line as well. So if we first call the meeting to order and ask for the adoption of the agenda as presented, please. Councillor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 3, adoption of the minutes, 3.1 minutes of regular meeting of council December 21st, 2020. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship. Meeting minutes from December 21st is before you for consideration, please.
Thank you. Any questions arising? Right. Thank you. Somebody prepared to make a motion? Councillor Garner?
Yes, I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor, that council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on December 21, 2020 as presented.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Business arising, there are none. Bylaws. Item 5.1, proposed bylaw, library board bylaw 5-2020. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, I would like to request Ms. Vanham to address this with council to let us know the changes that are coming up in this bylaw. Ms. Vanham, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Council. The changes are proposed, have been proposed by the Library Board for quite some time. That's why you'll see the 2020 date on it. However, they had the great idea to include some more definitions for Council, as well as adding some for the MD of Taber, and stipulations that just guides them a little bit more clear on the terms and what happens if there's no successor available. Some of the other things have been added by administration to more align with our bylaw template. But other than that, there has been no changes, and it has gone to the Library Board, and they are in full agreement with these changes. So thank you. I'm available if you have any questions.
All right. Thank you. Any questions arising? All right. Someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Tams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that council gives first reading of the Taber Library Board bylaw 5-2020 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. And the second motion, someone prepared to do that. Councillor Garner.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make that motion that council gives second reading to the Library Board bylaw 5-2020 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. And Councillor Firth, you're prepared to deal with the third required motion?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I move council gives unanimous consent to proceed to third reading of the Library Board bylaw 5-2020.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried.
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. And Councillor Beck, you're prepared to do the fourth required motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council gives third and final reading of the Library Board bylaw 5-2020 as presented.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great. Thank you. Item 6, action item 6.1, proposed capital projects 2021-22. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship and council members, as you know, 2021 capital projects has been approved, and there's some additional proposed capital projects here, and I would like Mr. Scheer to address them with council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scheer.
So we're asking council to look at 4 additional projects, 3.5 for 2021 and 1.5 for 2022. It's come to our attention that we are finally available to apply for STIP funding, the Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program. We've never been able to apply for this, but because we've annexed that lands and it's a regional facility, the landfill transfer station and your new parked area, the trout pond, we now have access to that funding. So we thought, it'd be prudent if we try to get some. So we had, the first one is a bridge file, which we didn't know we had a bridge, but it is registered under River Transportation as a bridge. The culvert in there is in bad shape as per the report. You saw that. It needs replacing. So we we believe we were eligible for 75% funding of that project under this program, which is excellent program. Part of the project will be to put guardrails in, strengthen up the road, things like that, bring it up to standard. The second project is basically the transfer station road from the west point of that bridge file to the transfer station itself. So that road would be rehabbed. The main issue with that is the stormwater's killing that road. There's hardly anything left of it. There's no ditches on the side. The water comes in and goes into the road, and we have no gravel left. So we figure we're eligible for 50% of that road. That's all. We'll go through the numbers in a bit. It'll be brought up to a higher standard due to the larger truck traffic throughout that road. The third one is the Trout Pond Road. That was never ever a road. It's been just a bunch of gravel put on some prairie. It's about 0.9 kilometers long. So with this, we actually looked at, there's going to be a lot of visitors to that area coming up in the future. Make it an all-weather access road. It'll be paved. It'll be a good transportation road. So we figure we can get 50% funded off of that. All these projects are very necessary. They need to improve. Very seldom do we ever get funding for any of our roads for maintenance. So this is actually something we've never had access to before. The fourth was a request from council with the 48th Street parking project. We didn't see that in the capital budget, so we thought we'd bring that forth for council's consideration. So if we look at the money, for the bridge file, we're asking council, that's 75% funded, $142,500 committed to the municipal portion. The waste transfer road, station access road, that 50-50 again with STIP, $520,100. And we're looking at engineering for the Trout Pond access road because construction will be in 2022. So if with the funding $50,000 and the town contributing $50,000, we're asking council for the $712,600 to contribute to the 2021 capital budget. And then the Tabor Park access road, there again 50% funded. That's $663,500, the municipal portion for 2022. And if you choose to move forward with the 48th Street parking, that's all yours. That's $170,000 for that project. So where are the funds coming from? And I'll ask Mr. Orwell for the 2021 capital budget to see if there's any money left.
All right, thank you. Mr. Orwell.
Thank you very much. So for the capital projects for 2021, if you recall, the amount that was approved, it was coming to around $944,000. Then after that, we added another $100,000, that is for the Ken McDonald concession. So we came to a total of about $1.04 million that was to come from the reserves. But we do have the capital contribution, that is what departments contribute on a yearly basis, that is from the tax base. We have 2.02 million. So based on what the council passed last time of about 1 million, we are still sitting with about 978,000 that if not used for 2021, we'll move that one into the reserves to be used next year.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question to Mr. Orwell. So you're saying we have the funds to do this without dipping into capital reserves?
So yes, we do have the capital contribution. Every year we contribute to capital, and it's normally about 2 million. But for 2021, from what the council has already approved, they have approved about 1 million. So we are sitting with about 978,000, which, if not, we don't have any projects for that year. We just move it for next year. So that's why Mr. Shea is requesting if council decides to move forward with those proposed projects, then we do have that money to fund those areas. But also remember that these projects being proposed are grant-driven as well. If we don't get those grants from the Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, then the projects will not go through. But if they give us that money, then we are pledging to cover the difference from the money that we have back in 2021 from capital contribution.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Mr. Orwa. So the STIP money has been applied for, but has not been approved. Is that correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
So therefore, if the STIP money would not be approved, the projects would not go ahead. Is that correct?
It would just go back into later years in the capital project.
Yeah. So we cannot move with these projects until we get the funding. It is grant driven.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
I just have some questions about the actual construction. The one that, the culvert that the Alberta Transportation recognizes as a bridge, can that be clarified or make them to be aware it's a culvert instead of bridge, and it would probably be a lot cheaper, would it not?
No, that's just the way they classify them. They classify it as a culvert bridge. Okay, and
It doesn't change.
It doesn't
the
change the-
rating or anything like that. And these numbers that we've been given as estimates, these would be tendered out if we do go ahead with these projects. So these are, I'm hoping, high
yes, they're
because they look pretty
they're-
high for some of this.
a little bit elevated. Yes.
Yeah. So no, that's good news. I think it's if we have this grant money that we should get free money. You always spend it. So
All right, thank you. Any other questions or raised? Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you explain to me or clarify the parking project exactly? I kind of forgot where that.
There was an actual drawing on it. John, can you turn to that, please?
Beside the seniors complex on
Yeah,
the
right
on the
across from
side.
Clearview Lodge.
It's got street parking now. This would make it angle parking just like it does on the
Down,
other
go
side.
on. Scroll down. Nope, just scroll down on the right side.
Oh,
Yep.
this one.
So that's the additional parking that would happen.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I realize it looks a little bit high, but there's irrigation we got to move. There's shallow utilities we're not sure of, so those are all coming into play. I don't expect it to get at that high for sure. So, but there is money in there if we have to move utilities and irrigation. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're not losing any of those trees in that diagram, I don't think, or it's just
No.
parking stalls there.
Yes, they do go right up against the trees there.
Okay, that's nice.
That's a shadow.
It's a good question.
Although we're learned how well fir trees do in this part of the country. But I had one more question. What the Tabor Park access road? Which road is that?
Trout Pond Road.
That's the Trout Pond.
Yes.
Road. Okay. And the engineering is for that. Okay, I see that. Thank you.
All right, any other questions arising? Councillor Thames.
I don't have a question, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right,
That council directs administration to add the BF 80500 rehabilitation, Transfer Station Road rehabilitation, and the Tabor Park Access Trout Pond Road engineering only to the 2021 capital budget, and further directs administration to add Tabor Park Access Road, Trout Pond Road, and 48th Street parking project to the 2022 capital budget.
thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if Councilor Tans would accept a friendly amendment to the motion to delete the word Tabor Park Access Road. It seems so clumsy to me. I think it misinterprets the actual Trout Pond Road. Why is that in there?
That's just how the funding went in like that. That's what they considered it.
Oh.
That's all. It's just a name. That's why I put the Trout Pond Road after it in brackets, because that's what we consider it, but the funding is on.
Thank you. I'll leave it then.
Perfect. No, I'm not going to accept that.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried down. Thank you. On to item 6.2, Old Man Watershed Council funding requests. Mr. Orwell.
Yes, I would like to appeal to Ms. Vanham to address this one as well with council. Can you proceed, please?
Good afternoon. Hello again, Council. So the Old Man Watershed is requesting funding from Council and to see if you're willing to provide funding to them. Historically, Council's not supported this request through the budget process specifically, and that's why it is in there. But Council has previously chosen to support other amounts based through Council's discretionary fund. So that's why we're bringing it forward, is for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? I guess I just have a question or comment for Mr. Scheer. I know we haven't, was it about the last 3 years we have not contributed? Does that just come up? So just to clarify, with all the newly committed funding for provincial and federal funding related to stormwater and or raw water projects upcoming within the Taboran area, does this not now make this more feasible to be part of as far as for future reference going forward?
Exactly. Like it provides a whole another dynamic and information and collaboration throughout the region. So it's really looked at as a good venture between everybody.
Right. So it's just under a $4,000 bill. So all things considered, it's you would recommend that's definitely a good path to consider for future. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember when we had a position on the water board or the watershed council. I believe his former councilor was on, and at the time he said there was never any meetings and he never got any information out of it. And I think that was part of the reason we decided not to invest into it again. So I would be more comfortable with a smaller amount and get a little more information what we can do for them and they can do for us.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Garner.
No, I had nothing. Councillor
Okay,
Bruin
Councillor Tans.
covered it for me.
I happen to agree full-heartedly with Councillor Bruin on this one, that I would rather see that we donate the $1,500 and let this Old Man Watershed Council come back with some more what their concrete plans are, because there's a big conservation element to this Old Man Watershed Council. It's not always about what's going to be best. There's a huge, big conservation part to it. So, and not all of it makes sense in my mind, but they do some good work also. And I think we're better off to just have give them the $1,500 from discretionary fund myself.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quite a number of years ago, I sat on the Old Man Watershed Council Committee, board, I guess it was called. And I agree with Councillor Bruin. At times, meetings were quite lax. And also, like Councillor Tams just said, there's a huge conservation part of it, and environmental concerns, and sometimes they conflicted with the wise use of water for irrigation. And I remember discussions that some of these people on those boards were not in favor of expanding irrigation and use of water by irrigated farmers. So I do think to have a voice on that, or to have a voice into it, perhaps, so information would be beneficial. And I would make a motion, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, that council give an amount of $1,500 from the council discretionary fund to the Old Man Watershed Council.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the table. Councillor Bruin.
Your worship.
Mr. Mayor, I was just questioning to Mr. Beckering, would it be, can we ask for maybe a delegation to come and tell us what it's all about? If we could add that to the motion, perhaps, a friendly amendment, because I'd like to learn a little more what their future plans are for this area, because I'm sure they have them, and it'd be interesting to see.
Mr. Mayor, I would not be opposed to that.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship, I've got a question for Mr. Orwa. The $1,500 coming to the council discretionary fund, where are we at with our council fund? Can you give us a dollar figure that we have in there?
Yes, so for 2021, we have 25,000 that was passed by council.
Okay, Your Worship, so we've got 25,000, and I was always under the opinion that the council discretionary fund would be for projects coming forth that couldn't be funded in any other way. So, I don't think this is something that should come out of the council discretionary fund. I think if council wanted to take a look at this in the future and put it as a budgetary item, I think that would be more appropriate than taking something like this out of our discretionary fund.
All right. Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Against?
All right. Carried. Thank you. All right. Item 6.3, 2020 Town of Taber Municipal Census. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, I would request Ms. Monks to address this with council. And
thank you. Ms. Monks.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. So administration has completed the 2020 census. The enumeration began in October and ran until December 20th, 2020. The project was a little more challenging with the pandemic in play, but we were able to successfully get a response for 3,445 of the 3,474 households, which represents 99.2%. The current population of Taber is 8,711. While this is less than what we had anticipated, it does indicate that Taber continues to grow. The methodology used appears to have been successful, with the completion of videos in Low German available on each iPad for enumerators to use in cases where there were language barriers. As well, 4 of the enumerators were fluent in Low German. FCSS aided with translations and in sending videos out through WhatsApp to encourage participation. 43% of respondents actually used the online system and were eligible for entry into a draw for chamber bucks. We'll be contacting those winners this week. Overall, considering the difficulties of completing a census safely during a pandemic, we're satisfied to see the continued growth of our community, and we'll be able to use this data for future projects and for service organizations.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Firth.
Not a question. I'd just like to commend administration on the creative approach that they took to capture all of the eligible residents in the census. Thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
I thank you too to this administration for the great job they did. I think you must have missed at least 1,000.
Yeah, maybe it was the time of year. Maybe it was a lack of our normal people coming forward to.
That could have a factor into it too, with farm laborers and that, because it does fluctuate a lot. Yeah. Okay,
right.
Thank you.
Councillor Beckery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Monks. On a scale of municipal census reports, 99.2% seems to me a very, very high threshold, like very, very good job. How do you know that for sure?
Well, we went, through His Worship.
Absolutely.
We went through all of the residences that we had in town, and actually we expanded a little bit this year because there were some residential areas in the industrial community that I think potentially in the past had been missed. We focused a lot on some of the downtown opportunities for residential as well. So, and then also permanent residents within hotels. So we had a very thorough GIS report for addressing that was then forwarded to the consultant and installed into a system. So each resident went through with an iPad and they had mapping and they had all of the homes listed. So through all of that, we came up with the 3,474 addresses that we felt were reflective of residential dwellings in some form, and that's what we used. So with getting responses for 3,445 of those, that's where the 99.2% came in. So it was fairly effective.
Great, thank you. Any other questions arising? Councillor Firth.
No more questions, but I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right.
I move that council accepts the 2020 municipal census report as information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.4, TELUS Insights project proposal. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, I think Ms. Monks is still on the hot seat. So just proceed. I think this is one of the requests that came from council as well.
Correct. So at the October 13th, 2020 regular meeting of council, administration was directed to investigate the methodology of the census program TELUS used in Revelstoke, BC, for potential use in Taber to obtain more accurate data for census numbers. So administration has had several discussions with TELUS in this regard. TELUS uses cell phone data to study the movements of subscribers and extrapolates data from the usage numbers and their market share. The data for the Taber area has been collected since 2019 through One Tower in town and those nearby in the MD. The usage data tracks time of day trips to and from town as well as overnight stays. It's potentially valuable economic development and community planning tool, but unfortunately cannot provide accurate data to replace a census. It would be useful to pick up visitors to the community, including going so far as to identify those from a particular geographical area. The data could be used to determine how many people live in the community and work elsewhere, or vice versa, or to estimate the number of longer-term visitors to the community, including using out-of-country phone data to determine the origin for community services, such as an English as a second language program. With Revelstoke, it was very beneficial to them because they have a high tourism base. So it provided data of the seasonal growth. It was partially funded by the hospitality industry. If this project was to be run as a follow-up to the recent census, it could provide beneficial enhancement for economic development purposes to provide as a backup to any site selectors who might be considering Taber as an area for growth. Administration could monitor grants as they become available and potentially work on this project with our Joint Economic Development Committee. Alternatively, the project could be funded, however council directed, or just accepted simply for information purposes.
Great, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin.
I think this is a very interesting approach. I think it'd be very handy, but I'm just trying to figure out our actual costs. I see 38,000 per month, or is that just for a month's worth of survey?
That was, I believe, for the year's worth of survey.
Total monthly cost, excluding of
Correct.
applicable taxes, 25,800. Now, apparently there's 2 towers within the MD. From what I read, would the MD at all be interested in sharing some of this cost, do you think?
So through His Worship, that would be our hope. I think it would be very interesting to take forward to our JADC to see if potentially the town of Vauxhall and the MD might be interested in searching for grants with us, or perhaps potentially mutually funding a study such as this, because there's some important data for them as well. And I believe that, you know, they're really looking at their economic development opportunities as well. So having this type of information available to someone who potentially would be looking in the area to bring a business into town might be beneficial.
Would this, I'm trying to find the map on this, but would this monitor traffic flow? Like you can say the Park Road's getting lots more traffic than this road, or we're bunching up here. Will it be that definitive that you can actually see the busy portions of town and at different times?
Sorry, through His Worship, it would really be dependent on where the towers are. So they can give us the data of, and looking at time of day usage. So if they have so many hundreds of people going into Lethbridge at 7 o'clock in the morning, then the assumption can be, and then they stay there for 8 hours, the assumption could be that they're working in Lethbridge, and vice versa. So it really is dependent on where the towers are themselves. So I don't think it would be as specific as to be able to tell if someone was using a particular road for those kinds of counts. I think it would be more on which areas you're gravitating through and how long you're staying in certain areas. So one of the other things that they said would be quite interesting if we were thinking that we had a high Mexican population at a certain time of year, it could actually tell us that. So they can take anyone who's got that international code on their phone and they can extrapolate that data as well and let you know. So that would be really helpful if we were looking at FCSS programs or TD-CALA programs, or even just to determine where our migrant workers are coming from.
Sure, sounds a lot like Big Brother, doesn't it?
A little bit. It's a little scary that way, to be able to tell exactly what, because they can tell if someone's staying overnight in town, right? So that was why it was used in Revelstoke so much, because they wanted to see what kind of tourism business they had coming in so that they could see what kind of services they needed to provide. So they were able to tell that so many people were there and staying this many nights in town, and that was just their market share. So then they would extrapolate from the other market share.
So we're able to pick which month we want to do, or?
Yes, we can.
So we do.
Yeah, we had looked at potentially if it was worth doing, it would be worth doing from 2019, because we sort of thought 2020 might be a bit of a wash. So we could see what our regular patterns were back in 2019, and then even potentially compare that to 2020 and see what kind of different lifestyle we've got right now, right?
Sorry for all the questions, but then so we'd be able to access how much information, like for 4 years, or how much information do they have?
Correct. Right now, I believe they only started doing this in 2019 was the information that they gave us, but you could track it because they're going to continue to track it, so you could continue.
So by enrolling into this, then we have access to all that, the 21 or 20, 19, 20, and now 21.
Right, depending on what you pay. So you can see there that the total monthly costs, and I can understand why that's deceptive because it sounds like 1 month is $25,000. But what they were saying is if we were doing all of 2019 through to January 2021, then the cost would be $25,800 for all of those months. Because, well, I guess that was 1 year. So 12 months was going to cost us $25,000. So basically $2,000 a month, a little more than $2,000 a month.
Very interesting.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I call this information overload. I'm prepared to make a motion.
Great, thank you.
Council accepts the proposal for information only.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion?
Your Worship.
Councillor Stravas.
The recommended motion says that we should put this over to the Joint Economic Development Committee and see what our joint partners in the area have to say about this. So I realize Councillor Beckering wants to accept this for information, but why wouldn't we let it go to the Joint Economic Development and see what their opinion is from Boxall, Barnwell, and the MD? It just makes good sense to see whether or not they would be interested in a program such as this.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brune.
I agree totally with Councillor Strovas there. We got to see if our partners want to proceed with this together, and I think it'd be great information, actually.
All right, thank you. Did you have a question directly to Councillor Beckering? Did I miss that, or just comments?
Comments.
Just strictly comments.
Your Worship, then would Councillor Beckering be interested in rescinding his motion and directing a new motion, directing it to the Joint Economic Development Committee?
Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I would not, Councillor Strovas. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Then we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Against?
It's carried. Carried. Thank you. All right, on to item 6.5, Southwest Alberta Regional Skills Study Reports. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, I think Ms. Monk, just proceed. It's still your show.
It's all me all day. So administration has been working on the Southwest Alberta Regional Skills Study in partnership with several of our South Region partners. The idea was originated through the Regional Economic Development Strategy and the Advisory Council with Lethbridge College. It's been identified by area businesses that there is a need for skilled workers in the region. The working committee recommended that we investigate further what skills were included in that need. Seeing that this was an area of interest to several of our partner municipalities and organizations, it made sense to work together and use that as an opportunity to get more information for less costs, while also providing a value to Lethbridge College for future programming potential. With support from the municipalities, Southgrow applied for and received a grant for the project. The study has now been finalized, and we will use this information and identified objectives and actions within our Economic Development Department to continue the work, and where necessary, bring any projects back to Council through our budget process. We'll also continue to apply for additional grants as they become available. Some of the recommendations will be relayed back to our community organizations and agencies for their use, and we will assist them with implementation as we are able to. The final version of the report is presented to Council for information.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Monks. In your professional opinion, is this a valuable document or not?
Through His Worship, I believe it is. This, as you know, we've been working with our goal to try to get some form of a Lethbridge College representative or something out here in the town. I think that was valuable to them in able to see where there might be some gaps in their programming and potentially where they could see a need for it here in Taber. So from that aspect, it's valuable because now it's enlightened them a little bit on what they can expect to see out here. But then also simply from our standpoint in continuing to hear that we need skilled workers, but not really understanding what those skills were, was a bit of a detriment. So now we've kind of got a better understanding of that, and we also have some recommendations on different ways that we can help our local businesses to find the people that they need, to learn even the proper or not necessarily the proper way, but a beneficial way to write their job descriptions in order for them themselves to learn how to successfully get the employees that they want. So there's some really good hard skills like that came out of this study. And so I think there's a value in that for sure. And then I believe that the organization or the groups that we've created now, the relationships that we've got going in this committee will aid us as well as we move forward in helping our businesses to get back on their feet after this crazy pandemic is over, hopefully. So yes, I believe there's some value in it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Garner.
To make a motion at this time that Council accepts the Southwest Alberta Regional Skills Study Report as information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.6, ORRSC grant application. Mr. Orwa.
In Ms. Mong's proceed again. I think it's your show the whole day today, it looks like.
Right. So Old Man River Regional Services is contracted to provide GIS services to the town annually. An orthophoto is also provided secondary to that contract. The current photo is from 2017, and ORSC is preparing to get an update flown in 2021. Through their partnership with 43 member municipalities, ORSC was seeking someone to submit a grant application through the Alberta Community Partnership Grant, and Fort Macleod volunteered to be the managing partner for that project. ORSC is requesting resolutions of support from the remaining municipalities in order to lower the costs for all partners. Administration has provided the requested resolutions for council consideration. Approving this resolution will reduce the cost to the town from $11,368.23 to potentially nothing if all of the partners sign off on the project.
All right, thank you. Councillor Tams.
Mr. Mayor, I see great value in this and what we do, and I think it's great. And with that, I am prepared to make a motion.
Thank you.
That council authorize the town of Taber to participate in an application for the 2021 South Region Urban ORF project submitted by the town of Fort Macleod under the intermunicipal collaboration component of the Alberta Community Partnership Grant, and that the town of Taber, a participant, agrees to abide by the terms of the conditional grant agreement governing the purpose and use of the grant funds.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. And item 6.7, information for council. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, there is one information we have for council here, and I would call upon Mr. Shea to address that. I think it's about the water issue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shearer.
So as everyone is well noticed, our water was discolored. We've had a few complaints. As far as we've narrowed it down, we've done many tests throughout the town. All the drinking water came back good, except for one. We had one household that was over the allowable limits for manganese. And that's what we think caused the discolorations through manganese. And that comes from our raw water. We've retested all the households the one household that was affected, and all the other households around the area. They were all fine. The second test came back from that household perfectly fine. So it's going to take time to gather all this information up to really discover where this may have come. We think the raw water, there's no doubt about that. But how did it get there all of a sudden, and how many there's a few other municipalities that were involved. We're still looking through that. There's still a lot of information together. Our local representative, that is operations specialist for the Alberta Environment, Chad Moore, we've been working with him all along. He's more than willing to come to council if you would like him to discuss this matter if you would like. That's up to you. But he saw this throughout Southern Alberta. And really, we don't know why yet. Okay, it was just something that came up, and it happened to Barnwell too. Saw that, but they have a different treatment system. They have a membrane system which pulls the discoloration out. We don't. We have a DAF system, which is more activated charcoal. So we can't get the real fine minerals out. But it doesn't mean it wasn't safe. It wasn't safe to use, consume, things like that. It was all safe. Okay. So if you have any questions.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Shearer. Originally, there was some discussion that this occurred as a result of the fire that we had about the time, but that proved not to be true.
Could have been could have added to the problem, right? It could be several different things that may have added to it. we were more worried about that the line collapsing because it was an old cast iron line, so it may have stirred everything up. But most of the manganese test that tested high was in the heritage area, so it has to come from the heritage to get to that area where the fire was. So it may have contributed, may not. I don't have that answer at this time.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that you mentioned, Mr. Chair, in Heritage, that's where I live. Several of my neighbors asked me to come to their houses and check out the water.
Yeah.
And I said, that's disgusting, because it looked disgusting, to say the least. And the weird thing is, in my house, there was no problem.
Yeah, we see that all over. We saw that.
I
all
couldn't
over
understand
town.
that.
And we couldn't. We don't understand it either. I mean, that's why we flushed and flushed and flushed. And you'll see the utility report next council meeting, where it go from $2.5 million liters per day we were using up to over 6 million liters because we were flushing that much water, just to clear up the system. But the water was safe, other than that one sample.
Any other questions? All right, with that, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Actually, I did have one question for Mr. Scheer, sorry, before you run away. When you guys do hear, or if you do hear what caused that, would you bring that information back to council, please?
Yes, we're going to know what went on. And like I said, we could ask Chad Moore to come in and discuss that too. You know, it's up to council.
Right.
But we will, when we get our findings, we'll come back and discuss it, yes.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Firth.
Sure, I can certainly do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the material received in this agenda item as information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.8, standing item council requests. Mr. Orwa.
Yes, His Worship, this is the opportunity for council to give our administration any direction or any question as a follow-through. But before that, you could also go through, just on the board there, we do have those outstanding items that we have currently. You can see the first two have been outstanding there for quite some time. That's from 2018 related to Japan. And then the next one is we're just waiting for some information there. Probably I might ask Mr. Scheer to talk about this one here. Is the information forthcoming? That is on the...
So we've been to have discussions with Kiwanis Club. They are just putting their proposal together. They'll hopefully be done in month and a half. We did get some information back from Fortis. It's about $160,000 as a project if you wanted Fortis to put them on. But we're looking actually at more in the solar area now. And Kiwanis said it's a good chance they're actually considering that as a project for the town. Okay, but we'll be back in a month and a half with that.
All right, thank you.
And the next one, probably, Mr. Scheer, I would also want you to talk about this one here. This is about the trout pond, the rocks there. Should it be closed off?
I'm going to ask the council to close it off. They did pick up the one rock. They can come get the other rock anytime they want. There's no point leaving this on.
All right, thank you.
Then the last one, I think, is just the one that was addressed earlier by Ms. Monks on the TELUS issue. So those are the only outstanding stuff that we have, and you can see most of them are almost complete except the first two that is related to Japan.
Okay, all right. So we need some clarification for that to come off then, that Mr. Scheer? Just
yes, so I believe
in the form of a motion. In the form of a motion. Okay. All right.
No,
so
not in the form of motion.
Your Worship,
yes, Councilor Chavez.
before you move from this here, I have a request that has come forward to me.
All right.
Can I proceed?
Sure.
Okay, so the Golf Club Board has approached me asking for help from the town of Taber to cut down and remove somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 trees along number 15 fairway by the curling club there. They've had a number of trees that were blown down in the winds a week ago, and they've done the smaller ones and the ones that they could handle with volunteer help and whatnot. But these trees are quite large, and they don't have the type of equipment to dispose of these trees, to take them out. They're large spruce trees that have been there for some time, and they're asking for help from the town, whether when the town gets caught up, whether they would be able to go in and assist the golf course for the removal of those trees.
All right. Councillor Strauss, you looking to do that in the form of a motion?
Well, yes, I guess that's what I would. I'll make that in the form of a motion if you like. I just thought I would bring it up and see with Mr. Shearer if it needed to be in the form of a motion. I'll do that now then. That council directs administration to contact the golf club board to help to remove a number of trees along number 15 fairway by the curling club.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
Just a question. Should this not come in from the board themselves instead of you, Joe? Because you're not on the board and you're sitting as a councillor. Should we not get a official letter or some information from the golf course to go ahead with this?
Councillor Bruin, they've sent an official request to me, and they asked me if I would bring it forth because of the time constraints here to bring it forth, because they're in straits to try and get these trees up. So they're working through me as a councillor to do this.
All right, thank you. Once again, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor?
Opposed? All right, carried. Thank you. Just for clarification, so related to the information item there, related to the rock and the golf course, that can just come off, and that was it.
So that will just fall off.
Okay.
Doesn't need a motion.
All right, fair enough. Good, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, about a month ago at a council meeting, I asked a question about those people in Taber with the small garbage cans like we all have, but those people who have small children, which produces lots of diapers, whether we could look into giving those people a larger garbage can. And Mr. Shearer said at the time he could perhaps bring it back to council for discussion. I wonder if there's some progress on that, because if not, I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shearer.
Do you remember we brought this back to council 2 or 3 times? All the times it got shut down as to having 2 separate garbage cans, where residents could have a larger can versus a smaller can. We brought it back, I think, 3 or 4 times, but it's up to council. If you would like us to bring that back, yes, we would need a motion, and then we'll bring it back.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion that directs administration to bring back the garbage can, large, small issue at a council meeting, not the next one, but the one after that, if possible.
So the second council meeting would that be the second? No, I guess the first
in February.
February, yes, please.
Meeting in February, yes. All right, okay. All right, motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. Any other standing item requests, Councillor Bruin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had some questions or suggestions from some fellow Taborites about all the trees that blew over in that wind. If there's existing trees that may blow over, there's some awful big ones that homeowners are concerned of, neighbors are concerned of their neighbors' trees. Does the town have any sort of program, or can we put together sort of a program to help some of these people get these trees off their property, or how do we approach that when there's a tree that you know is going to blow over eventually? I don't know.
To Mr. Shearer?
Probably Mr. Shearer might be the
right.
best to give some insight on that.
Usually if there's damage or trees leaning over, they're to contact their home insurance, and their home insurance should be contacting a contractor to come, because it's a liability, and the insurance company want to get rid of that liability.
At the homeowner's expense, though,
Yes.
right? Of course.
Yes.
But we have, like, for disposing of the tree, there is no charge for disposing our trees, is there?
No.
So they can compost, take it wherever they want.
Yes. Well, I shouldn't say that. There branches and stuff. You get a big trunk that we do charge for that because we have to chip that, right? Okay.
Just some questions.
You could say, because of the storm, we waive all fees for trees and trunks to come down to the landfill, if you choose to do so for the next month.
That would be a good idea because there's a lot of damage and a lot of older people's old trees fell over and now they're stuck with trying to get rid of them.
So we need that in a motion from council, just to make sure we're clear that there is no charge.
I'd be prepared to make a motion on that.
Okay, thank you. Just did have a question from Councillor Becker, I believe. No? Okay, just, all right. Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that the town cancels any charges for taking in tree branches and trunks for the month, till the end of the month of February, 2021.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table.
You
Councillor Stravas? Yes.
We're entering into an area here where we shouldn't be going, removing trees from people's yards and whatnot. Those are private properties. The town shouldn't be going down this road whatsoever. This is private property, and it leads to some real big problems in the future.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin.
Councillor Strovas, this was not to go into yards to take trees down. This was to for disposal of the trees. So we're not charging them because of their trees that fell over already. The motion is, I'm hoping you understand, is just for no charge for disposal.
So let me clarify that. So people can haul this already to the compost site. So you're asking for the town to pick them up and haul them there?
No, Joe, I'm asking just that we waive any fees for getting rid of large tree trunks and whatnot, because they have to be ground up.
But if they're taken to the compost site, there is no charge for that. I don't believe, unless Mr. Shearer can clarify that for me.
You might have missed when Mr. Shearer said we don't charge for the branches, but any large trunks we have to chip them, so we charge for them.
So anything that's larger than 4-inch diameter, we charge for that. Anything that's under, they can drop off at our compost facility or landfill.
All right, thank you. Councillor Tams.
I believe the motion that was put on the table was to waive the fees for what it takes. It doesn't say anything about picking up trees or going in anybody's private yard. The motion he proposed was to waive the fees, and I totally agree with the motion.
All right, thank you. Councillor Garner?
Councillor Tams encapsulated that well. I feel the same way.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now. Great, thank you.
That would probably also apply to the golf courses trees, I would imagine.
All right, any other standing item council requests? All right, and we have no delegations before us today. On to media inquiries. Mr. Orwa, any indication from the media?
His Worship, at this point, no questions at all from the media at this time, from what I'm getting from the communication team.
All right, thank you. With that, then if we can ask for a motion to move into closed session with a 10-minute adjournment, please. Councillor Garner?
So move that we take a 10-minute break and then come back and reconvene in closed session.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.